In this video, I'll go over the fuel system for the F-86. So let's go over internal fuel first and then external fuel later. So for internal fuel, the F-86 has 4 fuel tanks, 1 in each wing and 2 in the middle of the plane. So this fuel gauge right here shows you how much gas is in your internal tanks. There's also a fuel flow indicator. So obviously when I bring my throttle up, it's going to start using more gas and you'll see it goes up. So the internal fuel system in the F-86 is pretty much automatic. There's really nothing to manage, so you don't need to worry about anything here. Alright, so now let's go over the external fuel system. So the F-86 can take 4 tanks on the wings. So to put your tanks on, you click backslash when you're on the ground, and click ground crew and rearm. So if you go to your very tip pylons here, you can go to fuel tanks, and you can take the 200-gallon tanks, or you can take the 120-gallon tanks. You can also take fuel tanks on pylon 4 and 7, and pylon 4 and 7 only do the 120 gallons. Then just click OK.
Request rearming. Copy.
So here's what the tanks look like on the plane. So you control your tanks with this selector switch here. So if you have it to all tanks off, it'll just use internal gas. If you set it to outboard, it's going to use gas from the outboard wing external tanks. And if you set it to inboard, it will use the inboard external tanks. So I'd recommend draining out the outboard tanks first and then inboard. So this fuel gauge here is only for the internal fuel. So how do you know when the external fuel is out? Well, if you have the switch on outboard, whenever your outboard external tanks run out, there will be this light that comes on, outboard tanks empty. And whenever that comes on, you can just click this red button to get rid of your outboard tanks. And you can see they're gone now. So what about the inboard? Unfortunately, there's no light that comes on for the inboard tanks. So the way you know that the inboard tanks are out is if you see this fuel gauge start to go down. Whenever you see the fuel gauge start to go down, that means that the plane is draining out fuel from the internal tanks. And whenever that happens, obviously your external tanks are out of gas. So whenever that happens, you can go ahead and get rid of your external inboard tanks, and then you can switch back to internal. So next is the emergency fuel switch. So if the main fuel system is broken, then whenever you remove your throttle, your RPM is not going to change. So if that happens, you can turn on the emergency fuel system. Alright, so last for the fuel system is this switch over here that says Densitometer with the red cover. So I would just recommend always leaving it down to the in because what it does is basically it calculates the density of the fuel and it sends that information to your fuel gauge so you can always know exactly how much fuel you have. The reason why is because the density of the fuel can change. And if you turn the densitometer off, if you flip it up to out, then it's not going to account for the changing of the density of the fuel, and the fuel gauge is not going to be super accurate. So you can see if I turn the densitometer back on, this is how much fuel I actually have. But if you just wanted to turn this off for some reason, then it makes it less accurate. But there's no reason to even do that, so just leave it down to in. Thanks for checking out this video, and I'll see you later.